Imagine a pig sitting in front of a computer screen, not eating it, not chewing the cables, actually playing it, a snout pressing a joystick, eyes following a moving cursor, a small brain solving a puzzle most toddlers would give up on. This really happened. And once you see what pigs can do, you stop seeing them the same way. You start asking a different question. Not whether pigs are smart. Not what they think's featherless giant. But whether we've spent thousands of years underestimating one of the most intelligent animals on land. Let me ask you something strange. What if the animal we picture covered in mud is also the animal that can outthink a 3-year-old child? What if the creature most people only meet on a play is quietly one of the best problem solvers in the entire animal kingdom? Because the truth is, pigs do things that sound impossible until you watch them. They recognize themselves in mirrors. They remember faces for years. They learn their own names faster than most puppies. And in one particular experiment, a pig did something so unexpected that scientists are still arguing about what it really means. That moment is what this video is about. But to understand why it matters, we have to start somewhere simpler. We have to start with the pig itself. A pig is not what most people think it is. It is not lazy. It is not dirty by choice. It is not the punchline our culture has turned it into. A pig is a deeply social, deeply curious animal with a working memory that rivals some primates. In the wild, pigs travel in tight family groups led by older females who remember every safe path, every food source, and every danger from seasons ago. They communicate with more than 20 distinct sounds, each one tied to a specific situation. A grunt for greeting, a bark for alarm, a soft rhythmic call a mother sings to her piglets while they nurse. Yes, mother pigs literally sing to their babies. And the piglets recognize her voice within hours of being born. So before we even get to the smart part, the pig is already an animal with language, family, and memory. Now layer intelligence on top of that. In the 1990s, researchers at Pennsylvania State University introduced pigs to something no farm animal had ever been asked to do. They taught them to play a video game. The setup was simple. A pig stood in front of a monitor with a joystick designed for a snout. The screen showed a cursor and a colored target. If the pig moved the cursor to the target, it got a treat. Most animals fail this task instantly. It requires understanding that a small moving shape on a screen is connected to a stick in front of your face. That is abstract thinking. That is symbol recognition. That is the kind of mental leap we usually reserve for primates and dolphins. The pigs got it. Not just one pig. Multiple pigs. They learned to steer the cursor. They learned to chase the target. They even kept playing when the rewards became inconsistent, the way a person keeps tapping a phone game they actually enjoy. But here's where it gets remarkable. Decades later, the experiment was repeated with more careful controls. And the pigs in the new study did something the researchers had not predicted. They began making fewer random movements and more intentional ones. They paused. They watched the screen. They corrected their own mistakes mid-motion. That is not reflex. That is planning. A pig was sitting in front of a screen, thinking ahead and adjusting its strategy in real time. For an animal most people picture in a pen, that is astonishing. But the video game is only one window into the pig mind. There is another moment, smaller and quieter, that might be even more impressive. It happened in a mirror. For decades, scientists have used a simple test to measure self-awareness in animals. You place a mirror in their environment. You wait. Most animals treat the reflection as another animal. They threaten it. They greet it. They eventually ignore it. But a few species do something different. They realize the reflection is themselves. Great apes do this. Dolphins do this. Elephants do this. And in a study conducted at the University of Cambridge, pigs did something that came shockingly close. Researchers placed a mirror in a pen with 7 pigs. The pigs investigated it. They sniffed. They peered behind it. Within hours, most of them had figured out the basic illusion. Then the scientists added a twist. They hid a bowl of food behind a wall, in a spot the pig could only see through the mirror's reflection. To find the food, the pig had to look at the mirror, understand that the reflected image was showing a real place behind it, and then turn around and walk to that place. 7 out of 8 pigs did exactly that. They used the mirror as a tool. They translated a reflected image into a mental map of the room. They reasoned about space they could not directly see. That is not just intelligence. That is a form of insight. And insight is one of the rarest cognitive abilities in the animal world. Now think about what that means. A pig in a barn can look at a mirror and understand that the world it sees inside the glass is a clue about the world behind its own body. That is closer to how a human thinks than almost anything an animal is supposed to do. And once you accept that pigs can do this, the rest of their behavior stops being surprising. It starts making sense. Pigs learn their names. Pigs come when called. Pigs solve puzzle boxes that stump dogs. Pigs remember where food was hidden weeks ago. Pigs can be taught to sit, spin, fetch, and even open doors. There are pigs who use buttons to communicate basic requests with their owners. There are pigs who paint with brushes for enrichment. There are pigs who recognize specific humans after years apart and run toward them with what looks unmistakably like joy. Pause for a moment. If you've ever lived with an animal, I want you to tell me something in the comments. What is the single smartest thing you have ever seen an animal do with your own eyes? Not something you read about. Something that made you stop and think, this creature understands more than I gave it credit for. I read every comment, and these stories are some of my favorite things on this entire channel. Now back to the pigs. Because there is one more story, and it might be the strangest of all. In a farm sanctuary in the United States, a pig named Lucy lived in a barn with several other rescued pigs. Lucy was older, slower, and slightly arthritic. The food trough was placed at one end of the barn, and the bedding at the other. Every morning, the younger pigs would rush the trough and crowd Lucy out. By the time she arrived, much of the food was gone. After a few weeks, the caretakers noticed something odd. Lucy had stopped trying to get to the trough first. Instead, she would wait by the gate. When the caretaker arrived in the morning, Lucy would walk ahead of her, slowly, deliberately, leading her toward a second feeding spot the staff had created weeks earlier and forgotten about. Lucy had remembered the second spot. She had connected it to one specific human, and every morning she escorted that human to it so the food would be poured there away from the crowd. That is planning. That is memory. That is social strategy. A pig had figured out how to manipulate her environment, not through force, but through patience and persuasion. She had essentially trained her human. And when you put it all together, the picture becomes hard to ignore. Pigs play video games. Pigs read mirrors. Pigs lead caretakers to hidden food. Pigs sing to their babies, remember faces, name themselves into our voices, and solve problems with quiet, deliberate thoughts. So why do we still talk about them the way we do? Why is the word pig still an insult? Why do we picture intelligence in dolphins and chimpanzees, but rarely in the animals sleeping in a straw bed on a farm? Maybe because intelligence in a familiar animal is uncomfortable. It is easier to admire a creature we will never meet. It is harder to admire a creature whose mind asks something of us. Because if a pig can plan, remember, recognize itself, and feel joy at the sound of a human voice, then the pig is not a thing. It is a someone. And once you see an animal as a someone, you cannot fully unsee it. That is the real smartest thing a pig has ever done. Not the joystick, not the mirror, not the quiet manipulation of a kind caretaker. The smartest thing a pig has ever done is force us, slowly and stubbornly, to rethink what intelligence even means. To remind us that minds do not always look the way we expect. That awareness can wear muddy boots. That curiosity can grunt instead of speak. that a creature we considered simple has been watching us, learning us, and quietly understanding us for thousands of years. And maybe the real question is not how smart pigs are. Maybe the real question is how much we have missed by assuming they weren't. If this video made you see pigs a little differently, a like genuinely helps more than you know. If you want more stories like this about how animals think and feel, subscribe so the next one finds you. And in the comments, tell me which moment surprised you the most. The video game, the mirror, or Lucy and her quiet morning walk. Next time on Animind, we look at an animal most people never think about and ask a question that completely changes how we see it. Until then, keep being curious. Because the world is full of minds we're only just starting to meet.